Hello and welcome to the RWU Weekly Rail and Labor News Update. Each week, RWU brings you the news of what is happening in rail labor and in the rail industry in both North America and around the world. We monitor several different sources of news and try to highlight the most important stories of the week, focusing on issues of concern to railroad workers and our allies in the labor movement and the larger community. The update is published weekly on our website, railroadworkersunited.org, and you can sign up to have it delivered straight to your email. We're fortunate to have Greg record an audio version as well. He is a Solidarity member of RWU, a voice actor, and a member of SAG-AFTRA. We hope you find each week's news and information useful. If so, please share it with your coworkers, friends, and colleagues. If you have a story we should highlight, please forward the article and a link to raillabornews@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy.
This is the RWU Weekly News Digest number 27 for release July 1st, 2025. A summary of this week's rail, labor, and transportation news from Railroad Workers United. Please go to our website at www.railroadworkersunited.org for more complete coverage. A webinar on tap this time around. July 11th, the date for High Speed Rail Alliance's How the Railways Will Fix the Future. We've got a link to register for the seminar on our webpage email delivery and at our website. And this will feature engineer and writer Gareth Dennis, who will join the Alliance from the UK to discuss a new book, How the Railways Will Fix the Future, as he looks at the history, including some negative aspects of railroads, but focusing on the power to tackle issues facing us now to shape a better future with transportation logistics built by the rail systems. Topics for discussion would include lessons to learn from global railway operations on what looks best long term and what this might mean in the U.S. Federal Railroad Administration urging the carriers to step up conductor training and testing. The FRA released a safety bulletin related to a June 9th closed clearance switching accident that killed a UP conductor in Nacogdoches, Texas. Based on the FRA's preliminary look, the locomotive engineer was shoving 2 locomotives and 5 covered hopper cars into a siding. The conductor was riding the consist and collided with cars that had been left that fouled the siding, set out onto the main track. The employee had approximately 2 years of experience. FRA looking into the accident. That's an ongoing investigation. Circumstances raised concerns about whether that conductor was properly trained and qualified to perform switching duties according to a release from the FRA. A new rail line coming to New York, and a housing boom could follow. The New York Times ran a story June 26th talking about how for decades transit supporters in the big city have clamored for what is called the Interborough Express, a passenger rail line that would go through overlooked parts of Brooklyn and Queens, the most populous boroughs, without entering Manhattan. In April, that plan took a step forward when Governor Kathy Hochul approved over $2.5 billion, half of the project's estimated price tag. The light rail line, which would be the city's first, would make 19 stops along the routes in Queens and Brooklyn, and would cover that distance in less than 40 minutes, a fraction of the time it would take the subway and bus routes to do the same. It would run alongside a 19th century freight train route that goes past houses, highways, factories, and even under a cemetery. On June 20th, the Houston-based Green Corridors announced a $10 billion 165-mile elevated autonomous freight corridor between the U.S. and Mexico. This precedent-setting project could be in the making. The White House granted approval to construct, maintain, and operate an autonomous intelligent freight transportation system, or an IFTS, between Laredo, Texas and Monterrey, Mexico. It carries an estimated price tag of $10 billion and covered in part through fees charged to customers moving freight. The IFTS system uses autonomous freight shuttles powered by hybrid electric motors, with the goal of relieving traffic congestion, moving freight off the road and onto elevated guideways connected to secure terminals. An interesting story. Follow up on the complete look there at the link. Also from High Speed Rail Allowance this time around. Another seminar. A webinar about how New York can implement through running at Penn Station in the first half of the 20th century. Leading proponents of the Gateway Tunnels project currently underway there miss a great benefit, the ability to make commuter operations through running. This Gateway Tunnel project should be seen as more than a redundancy effort. It would provide 4 Hudson River tunnels which could connect through Penn Station to 4 East River tunnels, and they will bring symmetry that allows through running in that zone. You can register for that seminar through the High Speed Rail Allowance. The rail unions are warning the Department of Transportation rollbacks could jeopardize train safety. FreightWaves reported last week that the rail unions have raised concerns about Trump's efforts to roll back protections for federal inspectors that investigators put in place 4 years ago that say they could increase safety risks. They say, I should say, the rail unions say, that this could increase safety risks in the industry. In a notice of proposed rulemaking, or an NPRM, issued in May, the U.S. Department of Transportation proposed changes to Biden-era regulatory policies, including how DOT oversees enforcement at its modal agencies, including the Federal Railroad Administration. The NPRM would allow the railroads, during the course of an enforcement action against them, to petition the General Counsel of DOT to determine whether or not responsible personnel violated provisions with respect to enforcement. The TWU members have ratified a contract with Conrail, Transportation Workers Union, who work for Conrail in Detroit, Philadelphia, and New Jersey, voted to ratify a new 5-year contract. As of last week, the new contract provides wage increase of about 17.5%. Journeyman Carmen will make over $100,000 per year under the pact. And effective July 1st, this contract also calls for enhanced dental and vision benefits, establishes employee-only health plan, and improves vacation benefits. TWU will continue to negotiate for more paid sick days at the local level with Conrail. Transportation Safety Board of Canada has released a report on final stats for rail accidents 2024 north of the border. Reportable rail accidents and other occurrences down slightly last year, according to the Transportation Safety Board's final tally. The final count of 1,198 occurrences, 896 accidents, and 302 that are classified as incidents was down 3% from 2023. Accidents involving events with fatalities in which rolling stock is involved in a collision, fire, or explosion, or otherwise damages track or rolling stock. Incidents include situations where a risk of more serious events occur, such as passing a stop signal or switch left in an incorrect position. Accident count was down 2% from 23 and a 12% decrease from the 10-year average. The fatalities did include 56 involving passengers and 12 at grade crossings. Meanwhile, also in Canada, Via Rail logged revenue and ridership increases in 2024, with ridership increased 6.6%. And they've announced a new strategic plan there, what's called VI Action 2030, receiving funding to replace the pan Canadian fleet, Via Rail officials have announced. And like its neighbor to the south, Amtrak, Via Rail has seen strong demand for service with increasing income and passengers, despite, like Amtrak, facing a half century of threats to its survival, budget cuts, and train route eliminations, and running trains over hostile tracks owned by the Freight One Class 1 railroads. Amtrak and Via continue to succeed in spite of all odds. Also this week, Trump has put a target on SEIU, and the labor movement is fighting back. Federal agents strapped on tactical gear and picked up rifles and swept workplaces, parking lots, and streets in Los Angeles, with workers and residents mounting what is shaping up to be a bold, organized defiance to the Trump administration. And when a state labor leader observing the raids got swept up in the immigration crackdown, it has sparked a nationwide action by unions against the federal raids, detentions, and deportations. The No Kings actions that took place a couple of weeks ago have seeded a mass movement which is backed by labor to counter the Trump initiatives. Millions of demonstrators across the country came into the streets June 14th at about 1,900 protests in 50 states and Puerto Rico. Organizers estimated that the mobilization, called No Kings Day of Defiance, drew at least 5 million, which would make it the largest single-day protest in U.S. history. Indivisible, the ACLU, and the 50501 movement were key organizers. And storytelling is part of all social movements. The organizers chose the country's founding as a touchstone to organize the resistance against what they describe as an authoritarian regime, which was trying to celebrate the president's birthday. Well, that's the latest on the news end from the derailment department this week. Norfolk Southern train down in Georgia, and a derailment in St. Clair County, Illinois. Links to those stories on the webpage. Well, that's the latest from RWU. Please join us each week for a Tuesday inbox delivery, or go to the website at www.railroadworkersunited.org for more. Greg Giorgio here, Solidarity member of Railroad Workers United. Please be safe out there and stay strong.